Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly hangout where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. As usual, to interact with us, send questions and comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable, or on our Facebook event page for episode 105, The Lodge as a Business. As for introductions, I'm John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia, and currently sitting as junior warden. And I will hand it off to Jason Richards for the next introduction.
Hey everybody, my name is Jason Richards. I'm the senior warden of Acacia Lodge number 16 in good old Clifton, Virginia.
Thank you, Jason. Robert Johnson. Wait for it.
There we go. Sorry about that. Robert Johnson, past master of Waukegan Lodge 78, and current secretary in marvelous Waukegan.
Nice. Thank you.
Sure, thanks.
Over to the other Johnson brother, no relation.
Or
Nick
is
Johnson.
there? Nick Johnson, past master, Corinthian Lodge, number 67 in Big Time Farmington. A beautiful place filled with snow and other winter activities. So come on down.
You're preaching to the choir there, Nick.
I know. Well,
That's
you know,
the East Coast at this point.
well, it's not. Well, you're right. It's melting here, so we'll send the melt your way.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And last but not least, full panel tonight, Juan Sepulveda.
Hello, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge, number 80 in sunny Kissimmee, Florida, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast.
It's a very handsome introduction. And no snow, right?
No, today it was 80 today. I swear.
Nice. Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us. Let's get right into Masonic news. If you haven't heard enough of it yet, you're going to hear it some more, where this March 19th, just a few weeks away, the five of us will be at the Pennsylvania Academy of Masonic Knowledge, which is a Grand Lodge-sponsored event, and that will be at the Freemasons Cultural Center at the Masonic Village at Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. If you wish to join us, it's free to attend. They suggest a $10 lunch donation, but all you have to do is go to pamasons.org/academy, scroll down to registration information, and send an email with your name, address, lodge number, and telephone to amksecretary@pagrandlodge.org. That way they can register your attendance, get a head count for catering, and give us a heads up on how awesome it's going to be. I look forward to it. So, guys, you want to add anything else to that? I mean, we're pretty stoked.
It's going to be fantastic. We're going to have such a great time. We want all of you to attend either physically or virtually. We are looking into streaming as much of it as we can, which will be the vast majority of it, if my sources are correct. And it's just going to be a lot of fun. We've got a lot of things built into the day. You're going to hear presentations from each of us. You're going to have a group panel discussion in there as well. You're going to have a couple little special things for those of you who get there in person. And afterward, we're going to try to take the party back to our place to continue the conversation. So it's going to be a very full day. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to have a good time.
For those of you who are not familiar, Nick and I are in the Midwest, kind of, so taking the conversation back to our place means lots of beer.
We were going to go with whiskey.
Well,
With corn and oil.
Yes. Let's not forget the wine.
We weren't supposed to talk about the KY jelly wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
oh, hold on. I didn't hear about this part. I'm excied.
Well, that's because we weren't supposed to talk about it.
The first rule of Fight Club. Come on, guys.
For the brothers that have listened to our program for a long time, you'll get a chance to be on a live taping of The View, practically. It's going to be the five of us discussing topics in the panel session. And it'll be like meeting people. It's this strange internet phenomenon. You feel like you know people because you interact with them so much online, but this is the opportunity to finally get to like really put a face to a voice if you listen to the podcast.
It's a meetup.
And for those of you who spend all your waking hours stalking Juan Sepulveda, it's finally your time to cash in those big chips, big boy.
I've been moisturizing.
It puts the lotion on its skin, or it doesn't get to go to Pennsylvania.
You killed me with the I've been moisturizing.
So if you want to hear more of this, which I hope you don't, come see us in March. It's just a few weeks away. Next on the agenda, the only other big Masonic news this week is something we highlighted that was coming up last week, which is the York Rite Masonic Week was held here locally in the D.C. area, and Jason and I were able to attend. So Jason, why don't you fill us in on what kind of activities that were there and what we actually went to and who we hung out with.
So York Rite Masonic Week is really interesting just because it's one of those conventions where you come in from out of town, you get a hotel room, you fly out, and you can't attend 99% of the stuff they have going on. Because literally it's almost all, with the exception of the Grand College of Rites, invitation only. You have to be a Royal Archmason to be invited to any of these bodies, Allied Masonic Degrees being the primary host of this event. But right now I'm really just a member of AMD. So outside of one or two little things here and there, I could only go to the AMD Grand Session, but I didn't go anyway.
But we did go to one thing. We did go to the Society of Blue Friars.
We did, and we had a really good time there. They announced Michael Halloran as the newest Blue Friar, and he presented a short paper on Hiram B. Brother. It's a brother out in the Midwest who was a bit of a walking disaster based on the paper, and it was a really funny presentation and a really good one. So, but probably my favorite part of the entire Masonic Week visit was getting to sit down and spend a good bit of time talking with our fellow podcasting buddy, Brother Eric Diamond from the Ex Oriente podcast. We sat and chatted with him for several hours and had a really, really good time fellowshipping with him. We also got to see Patrick Craddock there, who is a long-standing friend of ours as well, and just had a really good time.
That's right. Brent Morris, Mark Tabbert, Michael Halloran. It's the place to be if you want to see some Masonic celebrities. Especially, for us, for Jason and I, it's just a hop and a skip away from where we live. So it's kind of nice that everyone flies in to basically see us. So that's a good thing. Would you go again next year?
Oh, sure. But I would say I wouldn't go for any of the events they have going on, because a real secret of Masonic Week is being able to hang out with friends and brethren outside of the events in the lobby, and they've got a lot of good swag. Like, I spent a lot of money on Masonic swag.
Here. Yeah, the vendors, probably some of the largest amount of vendors I've seen in one place. Probably more than Grand Lodge.
More than Grand Lodge, definitely. Better than... No, never mind.
On that note, let's move on to our favorite trivia game, the Masonic Monday question.
On Tuesday.
Wow. Hello, everyone. I hope you've had a nice long week to think about what we were asked last week. It was a really long question. Even I didn't know the answer because, well, I'm a dummy. So it's okay, though, because we had a really good turnout. So Willem Kosen, one day I'll get your name right, Jonathan Primo, Justin Miller, Jared Shemensky, Christopher Croto, Richard Shelley, Joseph Vanderstelt, Steve Whitaker, Robert Henry, Ryan Pagano, Joey Boyer, James Franklin, Barris Ehrman, and let's see who else we got. Some latecomers. And then we had, I think that's it.
There were a couple that sent their answers to the Masonic Roundtable at gmail.com. I
Which
don't
is
know.
nice.
I don't know the answer to the Masonic question on Tuesday. So
Yeah. Masonic Monday at gmail.com. And it'll change your life if you send it to me, because I'll actually get you on the board. So if I missed you, I apologize. But with that, the answer to last week's question was, where are you? Oh, there you are.
that's a
And
weird answer.
I know it was a beautiful answer. The Daily Journal. The Daily Journal. So thank you, and also thanks to our friend and brother Jason Mitchell, who hooked us up with that question. And now for the Masonic Monday question for the week of February 15th, 2016. Happy birthday to President Washington. Isn't that right? It's a great day for you. At President Washington's first inauguration, who administered his oath of office? In which lodge was this oath administrator made a Mason? And also, what grand office did this famous Mason hold? When you have the answer, send it to masonicmonday@gmail.com. Don't forget to include your lodge name, lodge number, and the hashtag Happy Birthday, George. Back to you, John.
Happy birthday, George.
What happens if they post the answer on Facebook?
This will actually destroy my soul if you post it on the Facebook page. But if you do, I have been told that 20th Century Fox will in fact not create the X-Force movie. And even worse, they will actually kill off Deadpool. Do not do this to me, people. I love all of you, except for the guy who posted on Facebook.
How could they kill off Deadpool?
They break the fourth wall into many, many walls.
Oh.
That's what they said. I don't know.
Like 16 walls.
Oh, there we go. Led to it. Beautiful.
Again, we almost made it through
Almost.
without a comic book reference.
I think we might have to have at least 12 in this one.
Oh gosh.
I'm counting.
Great. Now all these comic book nerds are going to show up to the March 19th symposium.
Yay!
You guys can just nerd out with Jason and Nick. It's fine with me. Let's get into this week's topic, which is not about Deadpool. And it is on the lodge as a business. Just merely saying that phrase will probably get some people worked up because Freemasonry is really a nonprofit organization. But even with a nonprofit organization, you have to consider the financial aspects of running a lodge. We did talk about lodge leadership in episode 27, the essentials of lodge leadership, and again in episode 96, planning your year in the East. However, this time we are strictly going to focus on the financial and business aspects of budgeting, marketing, and focus, really, for the sake of this episode. So let's get right into it, and in no particular order, I'm going to go run through a list. I want you guys to jump in with your thoughts as we go through it. But the first item on my list is, before you do anything else, you must have a budget. If you don't know where every dollar is going from all the dues that you collect and all the expenditures you have, stop what you're doing right now and go form a committee to go find out. It amazes me that even in 2016, there I go, to use that cliche, that we still have lodges that can't even run a basic spreadsheet to figure out where things are going, or we trust things too much with trustees or other, secretary treasurers of the lodge, that sometimes the master doesn't even know where the dollars are going. That's unacceptable, because you are, as Worshipful Master, the, in effect, CEO of your lodge for that term. Anything you guys want to add to that?
Well, I was going to jump in and say it's more than just hearing the secretaries and treasurers' reports, right? I mean, anyone can snooze their way through an audit committee report. but really you need to have a good grasp on your projected net for the year, whether it's going to be a gain or loss. And that's where you can actually take some of that power as Worshipful Master and say, okay, how do I effect a change in what the lodge is either spending or bringing in, and how will that make us either more fiscally stable or fiscally risky for future masters? Because remember, you've got that 1 year usually, sometimes more in the East to make a difference, and part of that making a difference is making sure that you're leaving your lodge in a better state financially as well as physically for your successor.
Leave it to the engineer to start the topic off with finance and spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets, yay!
No, but in all seriousness, Jason touched on something there very quick. It's not just that treasurer's report. And here's a pet peeve of mine. You have a finance committee, and you have all these committees that are entrusted with getting together on their own with no distraction, with with a certain amount of time to reach a decision. They should have one spokesperson, a committee head, that is the one that summarizes the decisions to the craft. Instead of having someone just stand up in the state of communication and just like go through all the details, and you're gonna get tuned out. Nobody is going to be able to contribute efficiently to the conversation. They're just tuning you out because you're just talking spreadsheets and finance, right? So,
see, I would love that, but go on.
Yeah, and just how many of the brothers that are in the meeting are gonna hang on to that? Like I appreciate a good graph like the next guy, but it cannot be so dry and so numbers driven that is not going to capture the attention of the brothers.
Sorry, I tuned out there for a second because
Yeah.
I heard spreadsheet and like I was just out. I'm like, man, these meetings, I do this at work.
If you have spreadsheet references of Deadpool, then you'll.
Whoa, Deadpool! I heard
Wait,
that.
But you hit a point. Really, the good summary there, Juan, is make it useful, make it relevant, get the so what out of what you're trying to show and demonstrate. And in Virginia, we do audit committees at the end of the year, like kind of when we wrap things up. So that's the last time you want to do an audit committee. Unfortunately, that's just the tradition because of the end of year cycle, the new master coming in, the audit reports that get sent to Grand Lodge, yada, yada, yada. And so it's really a little too late to find out where your money was spent that year, pretty much in December.
That's why, at least in my lodge, we have all the wardens sit in on the audit committee reports as well. Not that the audit committee report is generally intelligible. I mean, it usually is for Acacia, but it needs to be presented in a way where you're not just going through bank statements that mean absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm. Good. The next item I have on the list here is once you know where all the dollars are, both incoming and outgoing, then you really need to think about what it is you're spending your money on. And to do that, you are, as Juan very succinctly put earlier, which I think he'll elaborate on later, is we are selling a product, whether that be initiation into the craft or the good works that we do, the charitable donations, the things we sponsor for youth groups, etc. All of those things have to be taken into a basic economic framework. So, yes, I went there. Let's go look at some graphs.
So the thing here is that sometimes it's cheaper in the long run just to buy the damn goat instead of renting it each time you have a Master Mason degree.
Agreed.
I like where you went with that. That's a little bit more sexy than where I was going. So basic economics. I'm not going to bore everyone who hasn't seen this or heard of this, but if you do a little bit of Google searching on supply and demand, it's the first thing you learn in microeconomics. And basically, when you have a large supply of things, eventually the demand is going to go down. And so there becomes a point where people want to buy the thing you're selling, and at quantity Q. So what that is what people will find value in. We've alluded to value early on, and so what we're really trying to talk about here is if you keep doing something and people don't want it, the demand curve is down, but yet you keep doing it because that's the way it's always been done, or that's a tradition of your lodge, it's time to kill the goat.
So Freemasonry right now is probably a quarter of the way between equilibrium and your baseline red demand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right, and actually, I'm glad you hit on that, because we have a large supply of lodges. We have more lodges than we have membership, right?
We need
So,
450 lodges, and that's it.
so what happens? You're absolutely right. This is a basic economic theory: is that if demand is low, what happens is this equilibrium point shifts, and so it would shift to the left, where your supply, you'd have to produce less to meet the right cost and the right demand. In other words, you'd have to close some lodges to get to the right point of where people are going to join, and it makes having a lodge feasible. Does that make sense?
Or
Yeah.
wouldn't you be able to raise the price? I mean, wouldn't you be able to do, I'm just thinking this way where, you raise the price of it, right? So dues are, I don't know, say $100 a month, $1,200.
Mhm.
Then you could have many smaller lodges, right?
Right, but see, that would really flatten your X in this diagram. So your price could still be low at the same quantity. So you could have a whole bunch of or a small amount of TO lodges, for example, traditional observance lodges, and it would still meet that equilibrium point of quantity, number of lodges, but at a higher or lower y-axis.
And also, if you raise the price inherently based off of this diagram, demand is going to decrease. Now, you look at non-cost limiting factors like TO lodges being selective and things like that. But in general, your demand's going to increase with higher dues, except in the cases of brethren or people who want to become Masons thinking that they will be getting more or it will be more elite because of the higher costs associated with it.
You can really look at it like Apple and Android. The market is flooded with Android phones. You can take your pick of the litter. Go grab a cheap one or go get an expensive one. It doesn't matter. Okay? So that's where you're looking at it. Why driving the price up isn't going to do anything, because the market is flooded with cheaper options.
Right.
Shots
So
fired.
you look at Apple per se, they have many different phones, but they're all the same phone, and they've managed to, well, not so much in the last 6 months, but over the past years, they've got a good demand. They have a doable price.
Mm-hmm.
Gone after, and they've been riding that equilibrium point for a little while now.
Yeah.
You're right.
And there's
So
that variable of value that
Right. Thank you.
is very, very important because price is not the only variable that's going to affect the demand there.
So just to wrap this up, again, I like this chart because it applies at a macro level and a micro level. So think of this not only as number of lodges per demand of membership, but also think of it for every single line item that you spend money on, that you're producing as a supply, that your lodge is either sponsoring this page, full page ad for the Jobies, that it's sponsoring this charity, that it's sponsoring this pancake breakfast, right? Every one of those things has an equilibrium point, and too often I've seen lodges follow tradition when it's not financially feasible.
Hey, what did we give last year?
Yeah, let's do the same thing, even though we
That's
don't
one
take
of the
into account
biggest things
inflation.
uttered in Masonic lodges, with dues, but also with charitable giving, because we'll get those solicitations to say, hey, we're doing, this fundraiser. Typically, the lodge has given us money. Please give us more. And 99 times out of 100, the Worshipful Master is like, Brother Secretary, what did we give last year? Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Without any rhyme or reason. It's like, no, that is good money that you're just, flittering away without thinking about it. Now, I'm not going to say whether or not that's a good, sound fiscal investment. I'm just attacking the fact that you haven't even thought about the reason why you're doing it.
Very quick. Every time when I first joined Masonry and I came across situations like that where someone sends a letter asking, then people say, okay, are we going to do this? Yes, everybody vote, whatever. Very few times I've thought, I don't think that was a good move. Like we should not have replied with a contribution for whatever reason. But in very few occasions, I've heard very good arguments for it and very conscientious comments about why we need to be prudent in our management of our money. How we need to, not just to every hand that comes over and puts it out. We don't have to give. We have to be very specific as to where the money that we're giving goes.
Mm-hmm. Which goes into the next sub point on this is the sunk cost fallacy. If you've spent a lot of money getting to a certain point and it's still not yielding results, don't keep throwing good money at bad, right? You can stop at any time. And that's an emotional thing. It's a behavior that a lot of people aren't good at. Is we become emotionally invested in the money we've sunk, we've spent, we've lost.
Sunk costs, baby.
A good analogy is, that even if you're full, you buy a 5-course meal, even if you're full and they bring out the dessert cart, you're still going to shove your face full of dessert, even though you physically can't eat anymore. You're going to say, well, I can't waste that money. I spent all this good money. I've got to eat it all. And then you get sick the next day.
That's what we call the principle of diminishing returns, by the way.
That's very true.
So Juan, why don't you talk about the Pareto principle and how that applies?
The Pareto principle is also known as the 80-20 rule. And it applies, just like in some of the things that we've talked about before, it applies at a macro and a micro level. One of the ways you can look at it is that 80% of your profit in a business comes from 20% of your effort. And in other words, and I think I need to preface this by saying, brothers, don't freak out if we're talking about profit and we're talking about product, because if we look at what we give men who are searching for life, if we think of that as a product, just so that we can plug it into a business equation, we're offering the value of self-improvement, of guidance for betterment of society. These are values that we are offering. 80% of the efficacy of our organization is going to come from 20% of our effort. And if we figure out what that 20% is, if we can pinpoint that 20% effort that we're making, we can spend more time, not just allocate 20% of our time to that endeavor, but we can dedicate more time to it. That's going to make the return on our investment in time, it's gonna increase. So our return for investment of time is gonna be greater. It always fluctuates, but you'll always see a proportion that is very similar. 80-20 seems to be the norm.
So chase what works.
Exactly.
And stop doing the things that don't. RJ?
Let me ask you a question. So what about guys who say, well, this is, you kind of alluded to, don't get upset when we talk about making profits and things. And what about the guys who say, well, this is a fraternity and, we have, ancient lodges didn't have all these profits and things, how did they get along? And they talk about this stuff. And to those guys, I've always mentioned that, well, the IRS wasn't involved with those ancient lodges, right? What do you say to guys? I mean, really, like if a guy came up to you and he said, And we've touched on this in the past, because you are an artist, and one of the things you do is you lend your skill to the craft, and you make a living at that. And I'm sure there have been times where you've had to defend that.
Oh, most definitely. People think you'll have some people that are going to say, "Oh, you're using masonry to get rich." Like, first of all, trust me, I'm not getting rich by, by selling Masonic art and Masonic aprons. I'm not getting rich, and any Masonic artist you can find out there, ask them. But the point is this: as as a as a Mason, part of the reason why I can spend the time that I spend creating the articles that I write, the podcast episodes that I do, this time that I spend creating things for the Masonic Roundtable, the one of the reasons I can justify that time is because it's part, in a way, is supported by the result of my work. If I can't spend, it's in my household, time and money is going to be finite, just as in everybody else's. And if you don't manage that time and those finances correctly, you run out of both. So, I say to brothers that looking at the business of the lodge in an antagonistic way, saying that this is an organization, it's everything we should do should be free, might be aloof as to the real value of time that people spend. If we are offering the people that come to Masonry, if we're offering them value for what we're offering some sort of value, there has to be a return. It's not like we're here to make money, but you mentioned dues. Dues today are a fraction of what they used to be back in these days.
I'm glad you brought that up. Absolutely. That's a value statement right there.
Yeah, most definitely.
Your logical fallacy is anecdotal. Moving on.
But
There's some truth there.
I come across a lot of brothers that get their, like I say, they get their aprons in a bunch. Whenever you mention marketing in the same phrase as Freemasonry, I'm not advocating for putting billboards and having a 30-second commercial on the radio. That's not what we're saying. But being able to show visibly some of what we do is part of our marketing initiative. Being able to send out there real-life examples of people that have received what they were promised when they walked through the door, and through word of mouth market what we offer, that's where marketing comes into play.
So I think we're on the marketing topic, Neil, and I think one thing that we should, kind of a light bulb that went off for me this week was that some lodge meetings are really cool, whether you have a great speaker, whether you have 5 great speakers come March 19th to Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, or if you have just a very interesting program, I'm going to go ahead and plug it. The Patriot Lodge is meeting at George Mason this Friday night, and we are actually going to go into the observatory at the college. So we'll actually get to apply astronomy, and we'll get to see some cool stuff with a $1 million telescope. And that's a really cool program. Cost you nothing to do because we're right there on campus. It's open to the public. So how do you market that, right? That there are things that brothers, it's open for anybody. In fact, it's open to the public. So how do you market Freemasonry? How do you market that, the awareness of that offering out to other lodges, through email, through Facebook, through flyers, through we have a presence on campus. We have brothers running around, manning tables in public forums. So that is marketing per se. You're not selling anything, but you are exposing Freemasonry to get again greater exposure and greater awareness of what we do.
Well, let's be honest. We let the shrine do it all the time. That's really the worst part about it when it comes to marketing, is that we've passed that buck off to Shrine and said, all right, Shrine, you do it all. And then we'll just say, hey, Freemasonry in general gives $2 million a day to charity, but that's not true. only partially true because it's really Shrine that's giving that money, and then we're kind of piggybacking on that. And I think it's really unfair to them and to us that we don't take it upon ourselves to market properly. And it's really a problem on our end.
Okay, the next item on our list here is temple boards, legal protections. Robert, I know you added that to our discussion points. Why don't you talk about the legal protections that a good business and lodge should have?
All right. Well, excuse me. So we all know that lodges have, well, it really depends. So there's a couple ways this can go. In most cases, lodges have their own building. If that was right for you, and whenever your lodge made the decision to either buy a building or they rent a hall, usually there is, well, in a lot of cases, there's something called a temple board. Temple board is used much of the time when there are more than one lodge or group of appendant bodies that meet in one building different nights of the week. For instance, many times they're responsible for paying all the bills. So when the lodge wants Wi-Fi or cable or internet, the temple board is who pays for that and who it's under, right? The lodges then just pay rent to the temple board. What's nice about this is that the temple board has no assets. The lodges have assets. So if something were to happen, the temple board is held liable, not the lodge. The lodge can't be sued per se, as I understand it. The temple board takes the brunt of it. The downside, of course, to the temple board is if you don't have a good temple board, they're 100% reactive. So you have a couple lodges that say, hey, we want to replace all the ceiling tiles. All right, well, you got to get the temple board's permission to do that. Okay, so at the next temple board meeting, you wait however long to get a temple board meeting. You go there, say, we're going to do this. And they say, boom, approved. And what they do is then they send you out. They say, you can go do it. Well, then you and your guys go, you buy the tiles, you spend the money, you do it, and then you submit the bill for materials, and the temple board goes, great, we don't have any money, so now we have to go assess the lodges. So the bad part is that temple boards essentially are just a big circle of cash flow that really serve no purpose outside to me, outside of the legal protection. But that's only when they're not being used appropriately or when they're being used reactively. But they can be good. They make it easier for the lodge to manage everything. Like I said, when you have more than one, you don't have more than one lodge meeting in a building. You don't have to worry about who's going to pay what bill and split it. The temple board comes up with an agreement, assesses lodges, takes dues payments. Maybe a portion of your dues goes into the temple board. Those kind of things. That's my nutshell temple board. Is that okay?
I mean, that's an interesting concept. Here in Virginia, often lodges will have a board of trustees, which often consist of some senior past masters of that lodge, who will, they are legally binding in the sense that, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, they have certain legal authorities that they have to uphold with the finances of the lodge. Not so much that you have to run everything through them, but they are more of strategic financial planners, whereas a lodge, Worshipful Master, may be more of the tactical execution year.
So that's kind of interesting, and because what happens essentially is here a temple board basically does not do budgeting or anything. What they do is, I mean, the most budget they know to do is from my experience and different temple boards I've sat in on, they know how much they spend on average in a year, and then they figure that out and divide that by the members of both or however many lodges, and they say, you got to give us this much money per member, or just wait till we come knocking on your door for money. So I mean, it is interesting that way, but typically it's a really loose organization, and in that respect, I find them necessary for legal reasons, especially because of what we do as an organization. I mean, we're talking about several brothers meeting several times a week. People are always there. So just like a business, they need to have some sort of protection. And this is an easy way to do it.
Makes sense. It's not the most sexy part of it, but it certainly is an essential element.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Okay, let's start wrapping up. We could talk on and on all night about the financial things that someone needs to do, but tonight we've covered, how to do budgeting, the essential elements of having a budget before you do anything else, how basic economics work of every project that you do, make sure that it's worth every dollar that you spend. I'm sure Juan will elaborate in his final thoughts on what the concept of value is. We talked about don't be wed to your sunk costs. Just because you spent money already or even have spent money in the past, don't be emotionally tied to what you've always done. The Pareto principle has been key in making sure you're focusing on the things that give you the highest yield, and that also applies for resources as well. That 80% of the work is going to be done by 20% of the people. So keep that in mind. You're going to have those few active members. Juan got on his soapbox about marketing and how essential it is. Yes, we have a product to sell, and it is the wonderful institution that we have, the Initiatic Experience, as well as
the promise of self-betterment.
There we go. So let's make sure that everything we do, we are exposing it to the right individuals who need it. And then we ended up with Robert talking about the legal protections necessary and different aspects to do that. Let's shift over to social media to hear some of the comments we got from the brethren on what they are doing for running their lodge as a business. Jason.
So starting off with Joe Vanderschelt, he says, the lodge does not exist to make money. It also does not exist to do public charity. Raise the dues to cover your needs. What do you all think about that?
Hallelujah. I wanted to say that when you guys started, when you guys were talking about a budget, and my comment I wanted to say, if you want a budget, your only budget should be raise the dues. You don't need pancake breakfasts. You don't need any of that stuff. If you just had you guys pay the dues, they should be paying.
Yep.
I disagree, and here's why. Those are different sources of income. Dues are predictable for the most part, and you do have other fundraisers that can help supplement things. And but
if your dues were there, you wouldn't need to supplement anything.
Yeah, exactly.
In the case of Acacia, that is not correct.
Oh, burn!
Coming out of $100,000 worth of debt that we could not hope to begin to pay back, except by the charitable giving of other lodges and by the insane amount of fundraising that Acacia has done over the past 10 years.
Wrong. Raise dues to $100,000 and your debt is clear.
That's right.
Yep.
And then
$100 a month.
90% of the lodge members demit.
It only takes one.
And that's okay.
Yes.
Well, and that's kind of interesting.
Don't do anything.
Yeah. Well, that's actually kind of an interesting thing too. Is the idea for me, in some ways, I'm a little uncomfortable with asking the public to fundraise or to fund my fraternal activity. It kind of is a little uncomfortable because I know that totally takes this idea of lodge as a business and shrinks it into its own, where we're essentially eating from our own dish. We're never looking outside.
That
But
is,
it's-
unless you have some of that wonderful Brothers Blend coffee that's
Mm.
advertised on WCY.
That's
Ooh,
right.
That's
Good
delicious.
coffee.
Oh, I love it.
Brothers.
So if you look at charitable giving as a natural extension of who we are as Masons, I love the idea that we see in a lot of Prince Hall lodges, which is if you want to give back to the community, you fundraise for those funds to give back to the community. And I think that's just a really, really great model. Your dues take care of what you need to do to run the lodge well, but then if you want to give back to the community, you bring the community into that.
Operating expenses. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. I see operating expenses and a cash for future improvements should be taken care of completely by dues.
Agreed.
If you want to have some
That we can all
fancy-
agree on, it sounds like.
Yeah, and if you want to have a fancy carpet and a fancy ceiling and have some murals on the walls, then perhaps you do some fundraiser to give yourselves those little extras. And if there's a charity that needs some help, you do the fundraisers for that. But operating costs should be completely covered by your dues, I think.
So Chris Streeper has come on and he said, it's all about economics 101, a cost-benefit analysis. If there's no value to Masonry, why join, and most certainly why stay? Again, it comes down to selling the topic that we advertise. If we sell a lemon, we're not going to get a lot of customers, and the word-of-mouth advertisement will be soured. So marketing isn't the only thing we need to worry about as Masons. We also need to make sure that we're matching the expectations of those soon-to-be brethren who are seeking light within our halls.
We lost you, John.
And John's gone. So yeah, it's an interesting concept that again, we have to have some sort of presence so that people know that we're there. Again, we're not talking about overt recruitment, which frankly a little bit of that's okay. But more so, look, we need to make sure that people know that we're here and what we have to offer.
I would love it. I would love if the United States Masons had the same problems UK Masons had. Absolutely.
Being forcibly outed as Masons.
No.
That's
Well, to that point though, because see, what's happened over there is it's still viewed. People still know they exist, and there's still a mystery about it. The mystery is so high that they've run amok. There's literal conspiracy still over there. We don't have that problem over here. Whatever. We're just pancake flippers, Just those old guys.
So here's a question for you all, and John, we still can't hear you. What about that huge lodge or Grand Lodge facility that's only used once a year, that's costing like thousands or tens of thousands of dollars each year and cost overruns? Do we do what Chris Hodap absolutely hates and sell off those buildings because it makes more fiscal sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's my whole thing is Grand Lodge of Illinois has an office building. Grand Lodge Sessions is held in a convention center. I mean, it's kind of a bummer. Like, I don't like the fact that we don't have some grand architecture. It's kind of a bummer that across the street from my Main Street Lodge is our original 1920s mansion home, like built in stone. It's marvelous. We couldn't afford it. We lost it for $35,000, and it sold last year for $10 million. So they're just not. I mean, as it is, a moderate building that was built in the 70s that's been upgraded can cost upwards of $70,000 over the past 4 years to operate. $70,000 to operate a building for 4 years. Why?
I think that gets into, what else are you using the building for? Because there are a lot of Masonic buildings out there that are dual use buildings, like, they'll rent it out as, a rehearsal dinner space or a reception space or something like that. But even with some of the Masonic buildings in this area that John and I know of that rent out their buildings constantly, they're still by and large underwater when they take into account just the cost of running the building itself. And John, we still can't hear you, buddy. So John might be back with us, probably next week. And Christopher Martone brings up an interesting point. He says, the lodge that he's looking at joining owns a lot of property that it rents out and brings in a lot of funds to the point where no one ever has to pay for refreshments.
Wow.
And I mean, that's good. That's cool. But $5 or $10 every time you come to lodge isn't half bad. At the same time.
Yeah, we provide a meal every time. We put out a donation thing. Nobody ever, a few people throw a couple dollars in, but in large part, we don't collect money for food. We don't rent our building out. All we do is take in dues and pay that money out every year.
Yeah, and of course, brother Mike disagrees with us from Ohio. He says, don't sell those buildings. Find a reason to use them more often. I'd say it's not that we can't use them often. It's that we can't find people who will pay to use them often.
Or, here's an idea, is like close every single lodge and do like Valleys do for the Scottish Rite and just have one building where we all meet. Then you could use those nice big old buildings. It would be fiscally fun. You could probably do that.
Well, that's what Manhattan does. I mean, they have the center out in Manhattan.
The Grand Lodge building, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you've seen it, I'm sure. So
it's absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, it's it's an interesting conundrum when you look at tradition and something as timeless as these Masonic edifices that were constructed hundreds of years ago, and the feasibility and the fiscal feasibility of keeping those open and running. It's something that's difficult, and it's a difficult conversation that's not going to go away anytime soon. Hey, John, we're hearing your snaps, buddy. Welcome back.
Oh, snap. I'm going to go back to one thing real quick that was covered by Chris Streeper about if there's no value, why join or stay. A crazy idea I've had is, so I'm a member of 3 lodges, my Mother Lodge, Patriot Lodge, and a Lodge of Research, each with different dues, each with their own different value proposition, if you want to think of it that way. And, what if, instead of being emotionally attached to the lodge we came in with, that every year we decided how we wanted to spend or join a lodge based on the value it provided to us. So another way to think of it is if your lodge is not providing a lot of value for what you find and like, and I know Jason and I have given this advice to guys where they say, well, there's really, the closest lodge is not the best lodge for me, but I kind of want to get in, and then you could say the answer might be you can get your degrees and then you can travel around and find the lodge that is better for you, and then transfer your membership to the lodge that suits you better. So, too often, and myself included, I still have an emotional attachment to my other lodges, but from a purely financial and value-added standpoint, maybe I should reassess that. And I would argue that, we look at things like life membership in perpetuity. Why? Because it's been a Grand Lodge-sponsored program that you'll find value if you just give us lots of money all up front. And what if I don't like the lodge in 5 years because the leadership changes and they decide to just do things that are against what I'm for? Now you're stuck. So
I'm betting on the emotional attachment to my Mother Lodge.
Can you transfer lodge life memberships from lodge to lodge over there?
You can on a case-by-case basis, as long as the lodge to which you are transferring your life membership within the grand jurisdiction is okay with, the amount of money they'd be getting from the Grand Lodge.
If they're okay with letting you go.
That's kind of weird, but okay.
Yeah. But in other words, think of when you buy a new phone every 2 years. What if you bought a new lodge every 2 years?
Dude, I know guys who do that. So.
And if a lodge is losing members because they're going to a better lodge, now you have an economic free market for Masonry.
Oh.
But the problem is we can't ever let anything die.
Never. Never.
Bailout.
Good question, Chris.
Yes. So, John, those are the major things from social media tonight. Don't know if you want to just go ahead and start wrapping it up because
that sounds
short
like
on time.
Yep. Jason, why don't you start us off?
Okay, running the lodge is a business. Two things we didn't talk about today, but we have talked about, at least in passing in previous episodes, are insurance and security. If you are running your lodge as a business, you want to make sure it's protected, not just with a board of directors or a board of trustees or a temple board, but if something happens to your lodge, if someone breaks into it, sets it on fire, we've never talked about that on the show ever. You need to make sure that you and your brethren are protected. Acacia didn't have flood insurance. We had regular insurance, but we didn't have flood insurance, and that's why we had to spend several hundreds of thousands of dollars restoring our building after it flooded back 10 years ago. But you also want to invest in security measures as well, whether it's a low-grade security system or just some good locks on the doors. You just want to make sure that your temple is protected and that those valuables within it are protected as well. It's a lot of Masonry is very emotional. It's an initiatic experience. You form a deep emotional bond with your brethren, and you form a deep emotional bond with appendant bodies, with youth groups, and lodge initiatives and things of that nature. But there's got to come a time to where something just doesn't plain make sense, and it needs to be let go. We have a ritual school in the area that has consistently lost money by leaps and leaps and bounds every single year, and we just had someone come to our lodge the other night and say, hey, so I'm here asking for money on the part of the ritual school. They lost a lot of money again last year, and they need a lot of money from everybody, including Acacia.
Wow.
My question is, okay, why did they lose money? Why have they lost money? And what steps can we take to correct that loss of money? And if there are no steps that we can take to correct that loss of money, is it necessary to keep this thing going? Per se, if raising the registration price is going to cause the demand to flatline, flatter than it already is, then there is no point in keeping that thing running because it is not a priority to the brethren of this jurisdiction.
Pay to play.
So try to, when you're making these business decisions, divorce yourself from your emotions as best you can and look at the greater good of what's going to be good for the lodge, for the district, for the grand jurisdiction in the long run. And that will inevitably entail making some difficult choices, and you'll probably make some wrong ones too. No one's going to be right 100% of the time, but just try to remember that the lodge is as much a business as any other nonprofit out there, in the sense that it needs to have the ability to run and operate, or else it's just going to shut down and die. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Jason. Good summary. Let's move over to Juan Sepulveda, business extraordinaire.
There's an illustration I want to share with the brothers. I'm holding a very fancy whiskey lowball in my hand.
That's a red Solo cup for our
Yeah.
podcasters.
I'm holding a cup in my hand. Pretend that this right here is the lodge experience, okay? And if the lodge experience is integrally sound, whenever you pour membership into it, it should remain in there. The only amount that should come out is whatever is coming out from the top because of brothers passing to a celestial lodge or moving to a different state. Now, what happens? We get really excited when we get new members. Oh my God, we raised these many brothers. Oh, we raised these other brothers. How about instead of celebrating the amount of brothers that we're pouring from the top, we celebrate how many do not escape through the integrally compromised side of the cup, because you continue to pour members into the lodge, and you keep on losing members to the side. How do we keep the integrity of that cup? How do we make sure that there is no other way for brothers to desert our fraternity than by the natural progression of moving away to another land or another land, a spiritual land? So, how do we do that with the business mentality? Number one, we need to know our customers. Who are the people that are coming to Masonry and what are they looking for? Second, if we know our product, what does Freemasonry has to offer? Does it have some of those things that people are coming to Masonry to look for? If the answer is yes, we have to make an assessment. Are we providing that efficiently? If we're not, that is what's going to restore the integrity of our lodges. So, with as much passion as you can, make sure that you're celebrating the retention rate as opposed to the new memberships coming in. And you do that by increasing the value of the Masonic experience. And that's it. Hopefully, the things that we've shared here with you through the Masonic Roundtable, through Whence Came You, through the Winding Stairs, are things that you can apply to your life, to your lodges, and make that value proposition better. If you want to participate in this conversation, make sure to go to Twitter at Mason Roundtable, and if you don't follow me on Twitter yet, do so at WindingStairs33, and you can find me at thewindingstairs.com, where I have links to all of those things.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you, boss.
Nick Johnson.
All right, so I've been kind of quiet because, well, I heard spreadsheets, so I kind of fell asleep for a little bit. Building off of what Juan was saying, I think sometimes we worry so much about how to get guys in, and we don't value what we do. And I'm going to just say it in like real terms. I think that we need to charge more, provide more, and make the experience more for the guy joining, because let's be honest, most of us didn't pay that much to get into Freemasonry. More or less, at least in my experience, it was far cheaper to join Freemasonry than I thought it would be. When they said, "Oh, it'll be this amount," I was like, "Really? That's it? That's cheaper than an Xbox? Okay, I guess so." And I think we as an organization just totally devalues what we do, but we also need to provide the value, obviously, if we charge more. That's that whole supply-demand magic graph that, I didn't do so good econ, but anyway, things come together, and there you go. But, the experience itself, a lot of guys I've chatted with over the years have said, the degree work was really not that good, the guys were just kind of bored, that we're doing the degree work, and that's the problem, and those are tangible and intangible things that can be taken care of. And really, you're right. I mean, when we're getting these guys in, it is a product in some fashion, but we have to make it a good product, because if it's not a good product, people have TVs, they can just stay at home. It's really that simple. So, millennialfreemason.com. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Nick. Robert.
Wow. between Juan and Nick, man, that totally hit it home. Agreed with everything you guys said. For me, just to touch on, going back to what Juan said, making sure that we're celebrating our members who have been there. They've done so much to keep the lodge open, and they've been active for the most part forever. And if they weren't there, we wouldn't be here. So investing in them, just like employees, recognitions, doing these things, spending money on your members so that they value what they're a part of. And when they value what they're a part of, they're okay when you got to up the dues because they know the value is there. It's imperative that you show your membership that you value them. Send them their Masonic birthday cards. Send them get well cards. If your Grand Lodge has programs or awards, take advantage. Find a brother that is in your lodge who does something that qualifies for that award, and spend the time to do it. Don't let Worshipful Masters or secretaries or other naysayers go, we've never done those awards. They're for recognition, and we're not about recognition here. We're about masonry. No. Push it and get it done and do it. Make the phone calls. Get out there and do that stuff. You need to have that perceived value. And I shouldn't say perceived, right, because it is a real value. So make it valuable. That's what a business does. People who get upset, I touched on a little bit with Juan, people who get upset about calling this fraternity a business. Sure, if we were just a group of guys who decided to meet in some basement or a community center, rented it out for $10-20 on a Saturday or something, and we meet there and we do some charitable works, we hold a bake sale or whatever. Okay, we're not filing taxes, we're not a 501. Okay, that's clandestine. It's just, that's those organizations exist and they're clandestine. Freemasonry today, under a regular system, you file taxes, you're a 501 in most cases, fraternal associations, and by that, you're really close to being a business. And what sets you even closer to the line is the fact that we do sell something. And as John said, that's an initiatic experience. We sell, I try not to say it, we sell secrets. We do have secrets.
Absolutely.
And those secrets, the money that we raise and stuff, it's not like we're selling them like some pyramid scheme. Those funds go into the organization that you are now a part of for the rest of your life. Yeah, you can demit, but you're just a member at large. You can't unring the bell. You have bought into something for the rest of your life. You can't unlearn what's been done. So keep that in mind. Nick, cheaper than an Xbox, was so perfect. I was the same way. I was like, what? It's only X amount of dollars to become a Mason, and it's only so many dollars a year. They asked me, can you meet the financial requirements of being a Mason? I got my heart fluttered a little bit. It's like, what? Is financial responsibility? We're talking about I'm 27 years old. I have a job, and I'm not making the most money. I've got 2 kids at home. Well, what's this going to be? Well, the dues are $60 a year. Like, dude, my cell phone bill is like $110. I've got cable that's $90 a month. I've got. You serious right now? $60 a year? And I get to eat dinner every time I come and participate in stuff and learn stuff? Yeah, is that a lot of money? Are you okay with that? Yeah. Yeah, Nick hit the magic number for me. Masonry to me is worth $100 a month. I'd pay that. People pay that for cable. So, Lodge is a business. I think you guys had so many great points, and I really learned a lot. So thank you for everybody that participated in the panel. Thanks for watching this show. If you dig the Masonic podcast, WCY Wednesday Kimmy podcast is 9:30s on Sundays, and I'll be back next week, fresh off of quote-unquote holiday, where I was supposed to be at Masonic Week but didn't go because I couldn't go to any of the meetings. I'm a Masonic AMD scrub.
You're saying it didn't provide enough value.
Well, I mean, apparently I don't provide enough value to be invited anywhere. So,
You're getting the hint. It's good to hear.
No, I'm just kidding. I digress. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Robert. You know, if you don't believe we sell secrets, you haven't joined Independent Body. Right? I think the panel summed it up very well. You have to create value. You have to know your customers. We've talked a lot about things to cut, traditions to end, but the flip side is also true. Try new things. Experiment. Try a video game night for the brothers and see how that works. Try, new charities. Try getting out in the community. But the most important thing of all is measure it. Make sure you see the money you're spending and the return on your investment for every single experiment that you run. Treat the lodge as a startup, right? And see what works and what doesn't, and quickly pivot to a better solution. Here's a crazy idea. Not just buying your lodge per year. We talked a little bit about that. But what if you charged a cover fee for every meeting you had? When we go to see a movie, we pay up front. We pay a cover fee when we go into to go watch a band perform. If you have a good presentation, or if you have something of value, then what if you charge at the door to a Masonic Lodge meeting? Those are things that are unorthodox, but certainly something that could be a financial funding stream for your lodge, and could also help see what works and what doesn't. So with that, I think you guys have been a great asset to the conversation. I've learned a lot as well, and so I hope you've taken something out that you can apply to your lodge and how you can make your lodge the most financially stable and run it like a business. Thank you very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.